Welcome. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
And I'm Sylvia Earle. I'm an oceanographer, National Geographic explorer, founder of Mission Blue, and I'm an ocean elder. Thank you, ocean elders, for sponsoring this program.
Yes, and this is our show, Dive In, where we host informal and open conversations with the ocean community on topics of wonder and interest. We're glad that everyone's back and has hopefully made some time to get outdoors. Please put your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll get through as many as we can later on towards the end of the program. And there'll be some links in the chat along the way for you to reference. And before we get going, we want to remind everyone that the world
is blue. Never forget it.
And today we are so honored to have Bertrand Piccard joining us. He is also an ocean elder and a inspironeer, and globally known for the Solar Impulse Project and the related foundation. And he is now working on a new project, Climate Impulse, a hydrogen-powered aircraft meant to undertake a round-the-world flight as a flagship for climate action. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And I'm so happy to be with you, to be with Sylvia. You know, all my stories started underwater with my father diving together with Don Walsh in the Mariana Trench in 1960. And Sylvia was my hero, was one of the heroes of my father. You know, I have to tell you, Sylvia, after my mother died, I wanted as a kid to have my father and you getting married, because it would have been the perfect couple, the underwater couple. You never got married with my father, but you remain friends. And I remember so well, for the 25th anniversary of the big dive of the Bathys Cave to the Mariana Trench, you came to Switzerland to celebrate with my father, with Don Walsh.
Yes.
That's such a great moment. So although you're diving and I'm flying, we're always linked together, and also by the spirit of protection of the environment, of course.
We all ties together.
We have our ups and downs.
Oh, Lord. I'm going to try to share the screen while we're going along here.
I think it was inevitable that you have become an explorer in the truest sense of the word. I think scientists, explorers have one thing in common, that they never lost what they had as children. That spirit of adventure, asking questions. It just never stopped, and you haven't stopped.
He's a third-generation explorer.
Yeah, your grandfather really went high in the sky.
And you're absolutely right. We have to remain in touch with the inner child, the child that was dreaming within us and gave us inspiration for the rest of it. And it started with my grandfather when he made the first flight to the stratosphere. Maybe you can put the second slide, because actually
this one?
Yes. Actually, this is as much a submarine as a Bathys Cave. And my grandfather invented the pressurized cabin to make the first flight in the stratosphere. I think in the next slide, you will see the balloon on top. Yes, exactly.
Incredible.
And then my grandfather used exactly the same system to invent the Bathys Cave. That was this big float full of gasoline, not to burn the gasoline, but just because it's lighter than water. So it was the float for a cabin that took him and Don Walsh to the Mariana Trench. So this is the beginning of the Bathys Cave. This is the beginning of the submarine. Although it's flying, it was the same principle for diving. And I think the next slide is showing the Bathys Cave itself.
Yeah, exactly.
And there is Jacques and Don. And what a glorious moment. That was in January of 1960. It's the year you were born. Yeah. So really history and the principles. Yeah, this is an underwater Bathys Cave, underwater balloon. If you will.
Yeah. And it's something that's, that sort of reverse balloon mechanism has been used still in many applications for submersibles, the sinking and the floating.
But
Ship.
this is the moment to pay tribute to Don Walsh, whom I was always calling him Uncle Don because I knew him since I was born. And Uncle Don passed away a few months ago.
Yeah.
And when I see him on the picture here,
I know.
I think it's fantastic. So close to my father. And you know what I found in the archives of my father? I found this American flag.
Oh,
Ah, look at that.
That Don Walsh took that flag to the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Amazing.
And my father had a Swiss flag, of course, that was put in a museum. And I found that flag in the archives of my father when he passed away. And there is a picture of Don Walsh holding that flag on the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
so he also took some Swiss chocolate, I understand.
I think so, but
That
I
did not
don't think.
survive, however.
I think he ate them all. No one left for the museum.
No chocolate left behind. No. And even today, the chocolate is the especially Swiss chocolate is a submersible treat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it probably goes up high in the sky when you travel in various aircraft, right? I can't imagine you'd go without it.
It's true that after this childhood, looking my father diving, my grandfather going to the stratosphere, to follow you, Sylvia, what you were doing, look at the astronauts going to the moon. I wanted to have that life. I remember very well, I was 11, and I thought that's the type of life I want. Embrace the unknown, go into unknown territory, explore, discover, and never listen to the people who say it's impossible.
100%. It's the curiosity. You've got to just keep the curiosity going.
Some people are afraid of the unknown. I guess that's probably the greatest driver of fear. You don't know, but for others, and you're one of them, it's addictive.
So tell us about this big adventure in the around the world balloon.
Yes, that was the only dimension I could go. After the grandfather going up and the father going down, I could only go horizontal.
And you did all the way around.
And this was nonstop, right?
Exactly. It was nonstop around the world in a balloon. And that was really the first time I could achieve a big dream where people told me in advance it's impossible, and it worked. Well, it did not work the first time. And maybe, Sylvia, we have to also speak about the failures. And I think on the next slide, that's the result of the first attempt. I gave a press conference to say I was going to beat Richard Branson, Steve Fossett, all the big billionaires who are trying to fly around the world in a balloon. And the next morning I took off and I flew 6 hours before I ditched in the Mediterranean with a technical failure.
Oh, dear.
That was really my biggest shame. 6 hours instead of 3 weeks. I was crying like a kid, and the balloon sunk.
Oh.
Well, it was just the beginning of trying again until I would succeed.
Yeah,
that's the third time that wasn't it?
Exactly, the third time. And what's interesting is that, of course, failing is never fun. But if you learn something from it and you change your strategy, you change the technology, sometimes even change the crew, then you can succeed. But you should never fail twice for the same reason. You always have to fail for another reason until you succeed.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And we see that story happen again and again. And it's that perseverance and the tenacity and that really does eventually get to the success.
And learning from
the experiences.
Right. The mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure, Sylvia, you also got some failures at some moments, setbacks, and
1 or 2. Yeah.
But it's important to give that message to the people who are listening. It's not because we are successful explorers that it was easy. We also had failures. We also had moments of doubts and maybe fears. And the people who listen have to know it's normal. If they have fears, if they have failures, it's just because they also try to do something. And we always have to try to do better in life.
And never give up. Never.
Never give up.
Give up.
Never, ever. Oh, this is remarkable. Look at this beautiful shot.
Well, it could go this aircraft, if you will, can go
Yeah,
as high as the jets.
I love this image of the airplane going against the wind, 1,000 kilometers per hour, and the balloon going with the wind.
With
And
the
With
you
nature.
have no joystick on board, no yoke on the balloon. The only way to go left and right is to change your altitude, to take another wind that has another direction in another layer of wind. So basically you change your altitude to change your direction. And I think this is the beauty of ballooning. It teaches us also in the winds of life, when we are lost in life, in our problems, our fears, our failures, or whatever, to change altitude psychologically, philosophically, spiritually, and try to take another influence, another answer, another solution that brings our life in a better direction. So ballooning is a metaphor of life, and this is why I love ballooning so much.
And it's very similar in the ocean. You know, we have the layers of the currents
Yeah.
that carry us. And we've seen, like, as scuba divers or even as submersible enthusiasts, you get kind of carried here, carried there. Some
I love
conditions
to go with the flow.
go with the flow. But you really have to kind of look for that layer, that current that will take you
Where you want to go.
where you want to go.
Even if you didn't know that's where you wanted to go.
Yeah, it might be where you end up.
That was inside the balloon. It was not a fatalistic approach where we were just pushed by the wind. We have to understand the wind. We had the weathermen who were telling us to go up, to go down. We had air traffic controllers that were negotiating our path.
I'll bet.
Of countries that sometimes did not really understand what we were doing up there.
I mean, to me, I just marvel at how you were able to take into account those complexities and really follow the winds. But how do you know what they are? And the fact that at this point in time, it's not like when your grandfather made his historic ascents. He did not have the benefit that now exists of some predictability, not a lot, but at least some, so that you can plan to be in the right place, more or less, at the right time, more or less.
Yes.
Worked anyway.
You know, the weathermen were giving us a general view of the atmosphere. They had some monitoring with the satellites, and then they were telling, in principle, if you fly at 8,000 meters, you will go straight. If you fly higher, you will go left, and even higher, you will go right. So we had to monitor the atmosphere and try to find these altitudes. So we had a logbook, and we were writing for each altitude given by the altimeter, which direction given by the GPS we had. And then we had a perfect vision of the atmosphere. We knew for which altitude we had which direction. And then we could bring the balloon back exactly at the altitude where we had the direction we wanted. So it was a real teamwork with the weatherman.
Yeah. Did you have to talk to them about things like, you know, icing or other conditions that might be affecting the outside of the balloon?
Yes, the balloon was completely iced up.
Oh,
Really?
We were burning propane that was creating vapor and heat. And this vapor was condensing on the balloon, and the heat was keeping us aloft. But sometimes we had to go out of the balloon, depressurize, go out, break the icicles to have the ice fall down, and then we could repressurize and continue. So it was not holidays, although it was
No.
beautiful, but there was a lot to do.
Busy, busy. Oh, Lord.
And that made the balloon heavier, right? When that
Yes.
iced up.
Yeah,
It,
that's
it
what I was
was
concerned
very
about.
heavy.
And that to go outside meant you had to be subjected to really cold circumstances.
Yeah, but it was so funny because when I was a teenager, I was afraid to climb in a tree. And here we could depressurize. We went on the top of the gondola. There was 6,000 meters underneath. So that means 20,000 feet. With Brian Jones, we were not even secure. There was no rope. We were just walking up there and feeling perfectly well. And I think that's the magic of adventure. Each time you're out of your comfort zone, you have no reference, no benchmark. You can be much more performant, much more creative, much more imaginative, and you do things better. If you are in your comfort zone in daily life, you're a little bit stuck into your habits.
You know, one of the things I love about being in the high seas and the open sea is jumping out of the boat and just swimming where, as you say, you're here on the surface. You can dive down a little bit, but there might be 5,000 meters of water below you.
The blue.
You don't want to drop anything because you're not going to get it back.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
But
there is a surface, and you can go above, you can go below, you can go along, as long as you go somewhere. Because we need to refuse the status quo. We need to refuse inaction. We need to move somewhere and improve and do it better. And I think that's the meaning of human evolution.
And here you and Brian are celebrating the success, I trust, right? After
Yes,
you made it.
exactly. We made it, but there was nobody to take the picture because we were alone, completely alone for 7 hours in the Egyptian desert before somebody would rescue us. So we put the camera on a bag with a timer, and then we run in front of the capsule, and
Hooray.
there was nobody taking the picture.
That's awesome.
And I think if you go to the next slide, you will see what is left. Ah, no, not yet.
not
Go
yet.
to the previous
One more.
slide.
Previous
Um, previous slide, yes. You see on the right, you have this fuel tank and a little bit of frost on the bottom. And this is what's left after 20 days nonstop in the air. There were 80 pounds left out of 8,000 pounds.
Oh, that's cutting it close.
Is that running on fumes?
No,
Yeah,
I think
exactly. So when you hear that the sky is the limit, it's wrong. The fuel is the limit.
well, originally it was thought that this flight might take 17 or 18 days, not 20.
Exactly. Exactly. This is where we're really short of fuel. I think it's like you, Sylvia, when you are diving in a wreck and you see that you have almost no air left in the tanks, and you still have to go back up to the surface. It's a bit stressful.
Yeah, you got to be conservative, careful, and plan for the contingency. It's
always.
redundancies.
You
Yeah.
always have something in your pocket.
So
Yeah.
then here it is in the museum.
No,
Yes.
this is
Maybe this is my favorite song, my favorite picture. And it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning with the dreams of the child. When I was 11 years old, I met almost all the people who are having these crafts on their in the museum. Chuck Yeager, Charles Lindbergh, Neil Armstrong, only the Wright brothers I never met. And I was dreaming about what they have done. And suddenly the capsule of my balloon was put in display together with all these fantastic spacecrafts and airplanes. And I looked at that and I said, wow, how is it possible to have a dream that comes true like this? And I was so thankful to life to have given me the opportunity to do that.
And that 11-year-old is still alive and well inside of you.
Yes.
Completely, completely. And I'm sure for you it's the same, Sylvia. And I believe we need to keep these dreams. We need to keep this naive
Yeah.
idea that nothing is impossible. Because if we think like that, we can get somewhere.
If you think it's impossible, it's impossible. I mean, you just don't even try.
Yeah.
Here we are. Oh,
Speaking of things that are thought to
impossible.
be impossible.
Next story. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because, I showed the picture with almost no fuel left. And I said, okay, if the fuel is the limit, let's get rid of the fuel. And this was the dream of Solar Impulse, having this solar powered airplane that would capture the sun rays during the day to run electric motors and store electricity in the batteries to fly at night,
Right.
and then reach the next sunrise and continue.
Mhm.
And cycle after cycle, try to have almost a perpetual flight. So we could make it like this with André Borschberg around the world. It was not nonstop. We had to make 16 stopovers, but always with the sun. And this picture is fun because I'm making a selfie, having a selfie stick with a GoPro and putting my arm outside of the plane. There was a little hole in the door so the people could open and close the door from the outside. And I used it to make a selfie. So my team, the safety team, was horrified. The civil aviation of Switzerland was horrified. But nevertheless, I don't regret of having done that picture because I really had fun.
It's a wonderful picture, but they do say that the selfie stick is more dangerous than you have more chance of being killed with a selfie stick than being eaten by a shark. So,
This is the ultimate
selfie,
the
yeah.
ultimate. Absolutely.
And we, it's so great. We remember coming to see the Solar Impulse. We brought my kids.
California.
We came to California. We brought the kids, and we all rolled out at I don't know,
dark 30.
3 o'clock in the morning to.
Yes, I remember, and probably on the next picture you have the.
Here it is.
Oh.
Yes, this is a few hours before you came to see Solar Impulse landing in Moffett.
Look at
Those
the
San Francisco.
Huh.
I love that moment coming from Hawaii. 3 days of flight nonstop, arriving on the Golden Gate, and turning for several hours on the bay before it was night and I could land with calm weather in Moffett Air Base.
Yeah, it was just such an incredible. I mean, people were just so inspired and thrilled to watch it going over the bay, and
then the sound when you took
the
off.
sound when you took off when you came in the morning to watch the takeoff. And
Yes,
just that eerie, beautiful sound that it made as it was spinning up.
It's like a living creature.
Yeah.
yes, this little whistle of the propellers.
Yeah.
I think on the next picture you should have Solar Impulse on the bay. No, this is Hawaii. That was before the landing in Hawaii, and the next one should be above San Francisco. Yes,
there it is. Yeah.
I like this one so much. You have the LED lamps on the leading edge of Solar Impulse, 16 lamps, and altogether it's about 100 watts.
Wow.
So nothing.
Just extraordinary.
That's
I mean,
energy efficiency. To use the energy as well as we can to avoid any waste of energy.
Well, it looks inspired by an albatross.
Yes.
They don't waste energy either.
No, they have soaring down to a science, but it was
Those long wings.
so, but what was it? I mean, it's really I think the kind of the long stretches over the ocean must have been, kind of really pushing the limit, there's kind of no place to put down, right? In an emergency.
Yeah, there was an intense moment when I took off from Hawaii to fly to San Francisco.
Right.
There's a moment where I heard the air traffic controller telling me, Solar Impulse, you are leaving my frequency. The Pacific is yours.
Oh, wow.
And I had 3 days of flight in front of me before reaching San Francisco because the plane was flying very, very slowly to save energy. And it's incredible because you get a moment in the middle of the night, on the middle of the Pacific, thousands of kilometers from any place where you could get rescued. And you know what? I was feeling much better than in normal moments of my life because I was fully aware of what was happening. I was in connection with myself. I was in connection with the ocean, with the sky, with the moon. It was full moon.
Beautiful.
Just in the middle of nature, and it was a communion with nature. It was fantastic moments. When I think about it, I just would like to start again.
You know that well. The time in nature is so precious.
Well,
And-
under those circumstances, you really must feel like stardust.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is also why we need to protect this fantastic nature, fantastic life, which is a miracle on this planet. But unfortunately, it's not enough to say that nature is beautiful and life is a miracle to have people protecting it. It's such a fight to avoid pollution, to avoid destruction, to avoid waste, the plastic in the oceans, depletion of wildlife and natural resources. And it's terrible. Huh? Human nature is maybe not the best thing that was created on Earth.
Well, the good thing is this is the first time we have the capacity to really grasp how everything is connected. And you certainly have brought that home with your ability to make this circumnavigation and reflect on the miracle. The world is blue, but
The
it's not
world is-
just blue, it's alive.
It's absolutely alive.
Absolutely.
One of the things, I think one of the really wonderful outcomes from the whole Solar Impulse project was the work of the foundation and kind of finding new ways to
Get
solve
away
some
from
of,
fossil fuels.
but to solve some of the problems, but that are also able to be profitable, it's just sort
Yeah.
of new business models, which is really important because people are always like, oh, we've got to make money, it's the economy, as an excuse to destroy nature. But I think you're starting to show that there are business models that
Working
can
with nature.
work with nature to repair some of the damage that's being done.
You are right. Because the language of the key decision makers is an economic language. It's about keeping industry and economy alive. It's about job creation. It's about re-election for politicians. So if you come with the beauty of nature, they are not listening.
No.
But if you come with technical solutions that are economically viable and even profitable for the industry, for the economy, that create jobs, that help politicians to be re-elected, then they listen to you. Then they listen to you. And this is why we created this challenge of identifying more than 1,000 economically profitable solutions to protect the environment with the Solar Impulse Foundation. And actually today we have found 1,600 of them. And we are working to implement them. It's for water, it's for energy, it's for mobility, industry, construction, agriculture, waste management, circular economy, digital industry. All this we can be more efficient. We can produce better with less consumption, less waste, reuse. And this is really the big activity of the Solar Impulse Foundation today. Working with governments, working with the economy, with the industry, and also show that even for people who have no belief in climate change, it's an advantage to be more energy efficient. It's an advantage to have renewable energies because it is cheaper, because it's just a better business model.
Yeah, there's something for everyone.
Well,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
and through it all, to be mindful that the solutions that we seek for the future of our species are absolutely connected to maintaining the rest of life on Earth. We're not here all by ourselves. We're here because of the fabric of life that makes Earth habitable. And we know how to kill, we know how to consume, we know how to turn nature into profits, but how do we work with nature? How do we treat the wild systems as a library instead of a source of commodities? To take the knowledge, the wisdom, like I look at solar impulse, I think of the albatross. I think of Charles Lindbergh, who said if he had to choose between airplanes and birds, all things considered, he'd take the birds. But the concept of respect for nature as the underpinning of everything we care about. I mean, the economy, of course, health, but mostly we exist because nature exists, and we have to restore what we have lost. Some things we can't restore. We can't bring back dodo birds, but
Carolina parakeets.
so many things.
So many.
But we can maintain what we've got as a priority, as a security priority, so that all the rest we can continue to dream and have a long and prosperous future. I know that underpins what you're doing.
Yes, you are so right. The most important word, I think, is respect.
Yeah.
Respect, compassion, maybe.
Yeah.
And explorers respect nature because they understand it, they explore it, they know it. But there are so many people who have no respect. They have no respect for nature. They have no respect for life. They make wars just to steal the territory of somebody else. They make wars to sell their weapons. They inflict horrible sufferings to other human beings just for personal interest. They rape nature. They steal. It's terrible, and there needs to be a counterpart. People like the explorers who say, stop. We know how important it is to respect, to have compassion for other people, for animals, for nature, for life in general.
So that combination of respect and the empathy for others is so important. But it seems sometimes it's in very short supply.
Exactly.
And it can be very frustrating. And I think it leads to so many people right now, particularly, as we're starting to see that some of these urgency around some of the climate impacts, the stronger storms, the hotter summers, the milder winters, all these things happening.
Loss of wildlife.
Loss of wildlife. And people are beginning to feel a lot of stress and despair all around that, which kind of drives that negativity cycle.
This is a great counterpoint.
But it's a great counterpoint to, the new initiative that you have with the climate impulse. I think it's really a cause for hope.
Yes, this is what I want to do with the new project. We speak about one flight, one world, zero emissions. That means to fly around the world non-stop this time with a hydrogen-powered airplane, hydrogen prepared with green energy, so it makes zero emission, and this hydrogen is combined with oxygen into the airplane to produce electricity for electric motors. So not only zero emission, but also no noise. And this is something I have chosen because a lot of people believe that it's impossible to decarbonize aviation. And they say you have to ban aviation. refuse to fly. Well, maybe a couple of people will renounce to flying, but the world is not on this trend. The world is on the trend of flying development. There is no growth possible in India, China, America, and so on. So I think we have to stop being naive. We have to bring solutions that can allow people to stop polluting, but still move, to stop polluting, but still live. This is why I've chosen this project of a hydrogen airplane to prove that there are solutions, that there is hope, that we have to stop to be depressed. We have to fight against inaction and status quo. And well, it's a bit dangerous maybe to say what I'm saying here because I haven't done it yet.
No,
Now it's the beginning. We are building the plane. It's the construction. It's I think you have another slide.
Let's see.
Where,
Yeah.
Is it a little film or is it just a slide?
Oh, let's see.
Just see if it's because we have a
There.
yes.
Oh, look at this. Fantastic. Beautiful.
Oh, I'm not getting any sound, but we can talk over it. You can explain to us here.
Yes,
So-
and there. Yeah, you know, the plane doesn't exist, so we decided to use the shadow of the plane on the ground in order to show how it will be.
Mhm.
Here I'm explaining basically what I already explained to you. And we see Ilham Kadri, who is the CEO of ScienceCo, and ScienceCo is a big partner of Solar Impulse. Here we see Raphael Dinelli. Raphael is building the plane. He's a navigator. He's a composite material engineer. And we work together for achieving this flight. And we are supported by ScienceCo, who is providing the composite materials, the insulation for the here is what ScienceCo was doing with Solvay 100 years ago. You know, they brought together a lot of scientists, Nobel Prizes. They were always interested in exploration of science, exploration of physics. So yeah, I was saying that ScienceCo is bringing the material and helping us technically to achieve the construction of that plane, because it is not something easy to keep 20 cubic meters of hydrogen at minus 253 degrees for 9 days, because the flight will be 9 days nonstop for 2 people.
Wow.
This is Raphael.
All the human factors that go into it too.
It's always a teamwork. You never do something alone in exploration.
No.
Even if you're alone somewhere, there's a team who has helped to prepare and made it possible.
And they're all of our predecessors who've been making the discoveries, and we are the beneficiaries.
Exactly.
Knowing what oxygen is, knowing what hydrogen is. We didn't know going back only a couple hundred years that these basic elements that we now can work with in ways that really do promise the possibility of an enduring future. But what I'm curious about is, how do you deal with hydrogen? It's so tricky. It's explosive. I mean, there have been
volatile.
disasters using hydrogen. I think
Don't frighten me, Sylvia. Don't frighten me too much.
no, I
But
think it's like fire can cut both ways. If you learn how to work with nature, understand what the limits are, and then just, that's the beauty of being a human being, being able to really figure it out.
Mhm.
And I love the fact that you're accepting this challenge. And boy, we must do this. We must. It is the right way to go.
And there's so much investment now in the kind of in the whole green hydrogen area. And I think it is becoming, we know more about it today than we did
No, we
couldn't
can,
know,
we
can't
can know. Yeah.
exactly how to handle it, how to manage it.
Yes.
It's back to
We
work.
have to
H2O.
build- Sorry, yes. We have to build the plane around the hydrogen tanks. This is why there are two fuselage, small cockpit in the middle. And about what you said for the danger of hydrogen, you know, when you speak to specialists of hydrogen, they are less afraid by hydrogen than kerosene. Because if you have a crash, an accident, a leak, the kerosene falls on the ground and burns sometimes for hours. If you have hydrogen burning, it's lighter than air, so the flame goes up, it's above you, it doesn't burn you, and it disappears in a couple of seconds. So basically, hydrogen is much safer, but of course, you have to handle it correctly. You
Right.
need to have hydrogen-tight pipes and taps and things like this, but there will be a lot of hydrogen used in the future for heavy mobility, for industry like steel industry, fertilizers industry. And it's interesting to see all the possibilities that are made with hydrogen, which is outside of the cycle of carbon. So it's not a question of being carbon neutral, it is zero carbon. There is just no carbon inside the cycle.
So it seems like the beginning, really, of a revolution for energy that has been hiding in plain sight. It's been there all along. But it's the skill to manage ourselves in such a way that we can take advantage.
It's showing the respect to the
Right.
to it, you know,
Right.
for what it can do and what it shouldn't do.
Yeah, we have to show that something else is possible. And when people were traveling with a horse, they had some grass at every stop, and they thought it will never work with gasoline because we will need to put gasoline stations everywhere. And now it's obvious. And same for the mobile phones. People saying, oh, mobile phone will never work because we have to put antennas everywhere. Okay, now we have antennas everywhere and it works. And now we have people who say, you cannot have an industry based on hydrogen because you have to produce hydrogen with solar and wind energy or hydroelectricity, but it will happen. We will just make it happen. And I like this sentence saying that the people who say that it's impossible should not disturb the people doing it.
I love that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think it's
That's a good
motto.
takeaway.
for sure.
So is the route that you're planning for this craft roughly or how similar is it to the one you had for Solar Impulse? Will it take a different routing or?
It would be probably a bit more on the south, because, you know, since Breitling Orbiter Balloon and Solar Impulse, there are now some countries that you cannot overfly.
Oh,
They are in wars
well, you
and might be
have
shut down. So it's not easy to find a route over countries that have no wars, that have no revolutions, that will not shoot you down. So we will see the flight around the world should be in 2028. So we will see what is the situation at that moment.
But you will be flying mostly over ocean.
Yeah.
We plan to fly between the equator and the northern tropic. So this is basically Southeast Asia, South India, North Africa, and so on.
Really interesting. And is there any sort of emergency egress planned here? Does the personnel pod, I know in the submersibles, we always have ways and means to kind of escape the personnel sphere can escape. How about with the aircraft?
Yeah, it's the opposite situation than Sylvia. We want to keep as much distance as possible with the ocean. But nevertheless, we have parachutes, life suits, life raft, and we're trained to survive if we ditch somewhere. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. It has a parachute in it. There's a few aircraft that have that feature, but it's a good one, I think.
So we are not daredevils, we're
No,
explorers. So we
exactly.
are well prepared for everything we can prepare. And then, well, then it's exploration and adventure. Then it's the unknown, and you will have to adapt to the situation.
Right. Be creative.
Exactly. That's when you are obliged to be creative and performant.
Got to adapt and overcome.
Okay.
And what is is the body of this aircraft, what are the materials exactly planned for?
It will be composite materials, molded. So Rafael Dinelli is now preparing the molds to put all these composite materials in place. And we should have composite materials that are completely recyclable. Thanks to Science Code. This is a big difference.
It is huge. I know, we of course, in the maritime industry, we see so many people are making moves toward using composites and of various kinds for, surface craft and so forth. And I've always asked them every time, what happens to it at life end? And this whole notion of having things that can be circular in their manufacturing.
Like nature.
Yeah,
There's no waste.
there's no waste. And I think it's so important to bring that message as part of this expedition that you are really looking for very holistic materials that can be recycled or reused at life end.
Stardust to stardust.
Yeah, really, really important. And the lighter is the plane, the less energy we need to fly.
Right.
So this is also all the quest of efficiency in our world. Can you imagine that about 3/4 of the energy produced is wasted? It's not even used, it's wasted because thermal engines have a really bad yield, because incandescent light bulbs are completely inefficient. The normal heating and cooling systems are inefficient also. So we need to have our world being modernized. We need to make it more efficient absolutely everywhere. So this is one example of efficiency, a flying efficiency, clean energy, really efficient, so we don't waste anything, recyclable materials. So it's a message, even more than a plane.
It's again learning from nature. When you look at a tuna fish, their propulsion efficiency is on the order of 97%. When they swish their tail back and forth, the energy creates little whirlpools that continue to help drive the fish forward. And then it's not just the streamlining, although there is that, it's the materials themselves do not have great resistance. I mean, a tuna fish is just so well adapted for speed and life in the high seas. And I keep thinking of your aircraft and birds, the long wings, the albatrosses, those that soar and have this tremendous efficiency, but they can move their, they can adjust with just the tiniest little ruffling of their feathers or positioning of their bodies.
Absolutely. And we'll try to do exactly the same with our wings. We'll try to have the flaps move a little bit to absorb the turbulence,
right,
and gain more lift or gain more speed, depending when. So exactly like nature is doing, like the birds are doing. But your example with the tuna fish is really interesting. I did not know that the tuna was 97% efficient.
Yeah.
The engineers at MIT created a robo tuna.
Oh yeah, the robo tuna, yeah.
To try to emulate what real thing can do naturally, but there's some pretty savvy engineers who've developed propulsion systems, but they can't come close to what tunas are able to achieve after a few 100 million years of fine tuning.
Yeah, we ought to respect the tuna more, I think.
Yeah.
You have to respect nature more because
Yes,
nature.
There
yes,
you go.
yes, indeed.
Yeah. Love it.
So I want to remind everyone that you can put some questions in the Q&A box if you have some questions for us. But we're enjoying this wonderful conversation all the way to the end. So are there some other sustainable business models that you're seeing that could come from the climate impulse, the same as, or that will help to elevate some of the work that's being done with Solar Impulse Foundation?
Yes, absolutely. For Solar Impulse, I was a bit afraid to say that we were trying to revolutionize aviation because clearly Solar Impulse was not very practical to use, very, very big, very slow, needed a lot of people to protect it because it was very fragile on the ground. So I always said it's a revolution for energy more than for aviation. But Climate Impulse, I want to make it a revolution for aviation, very clearly. And when you see that Airbus has announced a hydrogen airplane for 2035, Climate Impulse is going to be like a test bench. It's a prototype. This is why Airbus is supporting us. We're going to prove that it works for two people, develop a lot of systems that can be really used afterward for commercial aviation. So we will be useful for mobility, useful for aviation, as much as useful to show what is possible.
And I'm wondering about, small aircraft too, with civil aviation, if it can also kind of scale down to
I want one.
Yes. But we need, maybe not in America, but we need in densely populated areas like Europe, we absolutely need to have silent airplanes. So we need electric engines. It can be powered by hydrogen, can be powered with batteries. But the airports here in Europe are threatened by the neighbors who think aviation is too noisy and too much. So the survival of aviation itself will go through hydrogen and batteries to have silent and clean airplanes.
And efficiency. Well, there's beautiful designs.
Yeah. So we do have a question from Michael who's asking, how long do you anticipate the wingspan will be on the Climate Impulse plane?
The wingspan will be 34 meters, which is 120 feet, 110, 120 feet. It will be just the half of Solar Impulse. And we will fly much faster. Solar Impulse was 45 kilometers per hour. That's 25 knots.
Wow.
25 knots. And this one will fly about 200 kilometers per hour, so roughly 90 knots.
That's good. That's pretty good efficiency. So
a little more. Sorry, 110 knots. 110 knots.
Excellent. Benita is just commenting that she's having a very Star Trek moment here. Captain.
But I have to tell her that Captain Piccard in Star Trek was inspired by the twin brother of my grandfather.
Oh,
because
wow.
my grandfather made the first stratospheric flight. His twin brother living in America built the first stratospheric balloon for the US. And he flew in 1934 to the stratosphere. And the founder of Star Trek took him as the model for Captain Jean-Luc Picard. But he changed one C. He wrote Picard with one C. And my cousin, Mary Lou Piccard in the States, asked him, but why did you change the spelling? And he said, oh, I was afraid that the Piccard family would sue me.
I think it's usually the Cousteau family that's the litigious one.
also would not have sued him because it was such a nice tribute to my great uncle.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful tribute. And, you know, it's interesting to think about, you know, like how many people out there kind of know that connection, and hopefully now more of them do.
Yeah.
Well, was it your father's brother, Don, who had balloons in North America, in the US?
Absolutely. Don was actually the son of Captain Piccard, of Jean Piccard.
Right,
And
because he
Don,
invited
Don,
me to go in a balloon with him in Napa. Oh my goodness, I've almost forgotten. And I have a T-shirt.
yes, did you fly with him?
Did you you flew with
Yeah.
him? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, with Don.
Okay,
Yeah.
where's the picture?
It would be your uncle.
Absolutely. Because, you know, hot air balloon disappeared in history very, very quickly. There has been the Montgolfier brothers, and then the hot air balloons that they invented has been replaced by gas balloons with hydrogen and then helium. And for almost 150 years, nobody was flying hot air balloons until Don Piccard and Ed Yost reinvented modern hot air balloons by using nylon to do the envelope, building very light propane burners, and then it became a new sport. The 1960s it
Very
started.
popular. Yeah.
We got one more question from James. He is asking, is the development of hydrogen aviation industry a threat to the oil industry?
I hope so.
I would say that it will threaten the use of oil, but it will help the oil industry to diversify and to embrace the energy transition. Because you cannot destroy the entire oil industry. It's hundreds of thousands of people working there, earning their life. And you have to give them a way to diversify. And oil companies know very well how to deal with the gas or with the liquid, to produce it, to transport it, to distribute, to sell it. So progressively, I think there is a big hope that the oil and gas companies will work with hydrogen and find a new business that will be much cleaner, and it will be helpful for our world.
Yeah, it's really kind of adapting to, you know, the pressures, the realities of it, and the pressures that 8 billion people are putting onto the limited resources of the planet. We have to come up with change and ways that we can be less impactful, and being, you know, more positively impactful.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's,
imagine if we didn't know.
yeah, but we do know.
Right.
And thank you for taking action.
Yeah.
We all need to take action, and we all need to create this enthusiasm around us. And this is why the Explorers Club and the Ocean Elders and Mission Blue is so important. It brings people together, show what is possible, try to restore hope, and bring more respect to the environment, toward nature, and bring people into this beautiful adventure of protecting the environment.
And National Geographic has documented from the very beginning your grandfather, your father, with Don Walsh, and you.
And you, yeah, and you.
It's that somewhere in society, the institutions that really, it's science, of course, but the just exploration for the sake of wanting to know. And the consequences are what really change the world in a positive way. You don't really sometimes start out knowing what you're going to find at the end. That's the whole point of
It's the point of exploration.
If you knew, you wouldn't have to go.
And tell that to the National Science Foundation. So,
yeah, there are too many people who say, oh, we are the victims of the past and what people have done in the past, and there's nothing to do. No, we have to show that that we are not the victims of the past, we are the actors of the future.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Well,
there
we
are of new jobs that have to be created in new professions. I don't know how it is in the States, but in Europe, there is a lack of people to install solar cells, to insulate and renovate buildings, to install heat pumps, to go into all these professions of the future. And we need to train much more young people, educate them, show them what are the jobs that they have to do. It's useful to the world, and they will never be unemployed because we need these jobs. And this, I think, also gives hope to the youth.
It does. I mean, every intern that we have that we bring through that gets that opportunity to do some hands-on things, it's just amazing and so gratifying. Just watch them blossom. And they're so
Yeah, if you know what the problems are, if you turn these 8 billion minds loose on finding solutions and not accepting failure as an option, it's just
Yeah.
yeah.
So we know that, but we have to make it contagious. Other
Well-
people will adopt also this state of mind.
Well, we'll keep at it, and I know you will.
We all will. We all will.
Yeah, and that's what really keeps us inspired to, keep doing these programs. And we are at the top of the hour, so we have to get ready to sign off. But I wanted to thank you so much for taking some time from your busy schedule to come and chat with us and chat with all the followers of Dive In.
Inspire those who are listening.
Inspire them, and hope that they've been inspired to inspire others. And we'd just like to say again, thank you, and to thank the Ocean Elders and everyone in the diving community that keeps joining us for these wonderful conversation. Water and sky connect us all.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I was so happy to be able to speak with you and forget the 12,000 kilometers that exist between you and me, and today spend an hour together. I was so happy. Thank you to,
we are too.
to Gigi Brisson, who also set it up with the Ocean Elders.
Yeah, she's a star.
Okay.
So before we go, remember to take care of the ocean and the sky.
As if your life depends on it, because
it does.
It does.
We'll be back again next month. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.